The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound left alive in the tower of Echelon Tech. Midnight had passed long ago, yet the building still breathed softly, uneasily, like a sleepless giant. The fluorescent lights in most floors were dead, leaving behind only a few pale halos over the marble halls. Somewhere high above the top floor waited in silence. Inside the CEO's office, Evelyn Carter sat motionless on a leather sofa, eyes closed. To anyone watching, she looked asleep. But her pulse was too quick, her breathing too shallow. She could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the far wall, steady, merciless, like it was counting down to something. On the desk, her laptop glowed faint blue in the darkness. A transfer window blinked on the screen. $500, $1,000. One click away. Her hand rested near the mouse fingers, perfectly still. In the stillness, Evelyn thought, if someone means to betray me tonight, I'll know. Down below, in the maintenance corridor, Michael Reyes pushed his janitor's cart toward the service elevator. His back ached, his palms raw from detergent and long hours. The night shift was always the hardest, 8 floors, endless glass, endless silence. As the elevator hummed upward, he closed his eyes for a moment, listening to its faint groan. That sound metal rising against gravity reminded him of life itself. Always heavy, always uphill. When the doors opened at the top floor, he exhaled. The carpet here was thicker, the air colder, cleaner. It smelled faintly of cedar wood and the expensive perfume Evelyn used to leave lingering in the halls. He'd never met her in person. Only heard the whispers, youngest female CEO in the company's history, brilliant, cold, beautiful, and lately losing control. Michael wheeled his cart down the corridor mop, squeaking softly on polished floors. The rhythmic sound echoed, mixing with the steady tick-tick of the clock inside the CEO's office. When he reached the half-open door, he hesitated. The room was dim, only one desk lamp still burning. He saw her there, Evelyn Carter, apparently asleep, one arm dangling loosely off the sofa. Her suit, still perfectly pressed, her heels kicked off near the carpet. The laptop glowed beside her screen, wide open. Michael frowned. That wasn't like her from what he'd heard. A CEO leaving her computer unlocked with a transfer page open. That didn't fit. He stepped closer, cautious, the sound of his shoes muffled by the carpet. The hum of the air vent deepened, whispering above him. The laptop's light painted her face in soft gold. She didn't stir. He leaned in. His gaze fixed on the amount $500,000 in the empty confirmation field, waiting for a single press of enter. He could hear his own heartbeat now. What kind of test is this? He straightened, exhaled slowly. The temptation wasn't about money. It was about curiosity and something deeper, instinctive. Something old inside him, long buried. The layout of the code on the screen, the faint flicker of a hidden window behind the transfer page, it was familiar. Too familiar. He whispered, "Wait a second." With careful fingers, he touched the keyboard. Just a few keys. The kind only someone who knew what they were doing would ever press. A secondary window opened, a hidden process running quietly behind the financial portal. Lines of text scrolled, random to most eyes, but not to him. Michael's brows furrowed. No, not random. A back door. Someone had left a path open, one leading straight out of Echelon servers to an external address. Whoever built it was skilled, maybe brilliant, but careless enough to leave traces. He felt his pulse quicken. The pattern of the encryption, the syntax, it carried his own signature. Not literally his name, but the style of logic he'd once taught others to write. He almost laughed under his breath. "Guess my ghost came back to visit," he muttered. The soft click of keys echoed in the stillness. He wasn't stealing. He was closing doors, patching holes. His hands moved faster, steady. The clock ticked louder in his ears, like it was syncing to his heartbeat. From the sofa, Evelyn's eyelids fluttered, though she kept still. She could hear him typing, measured, precise, not the clumsy tapping of a janitor curious about money. She opened her eyes a slit. Michael stood under the lamp, the light outlining his tired face and rough uniform. He didn't look like a thief. He looked like a man trying to fix something that wasn't his fault. Her chest tightened. "What are you doing, Mr. Reyes?" He finished typing, exhaled, and created a log, a record of everything he saw, every digital footprint. Then in a blank field at the bottom, he typed one final note. "You have a problem. I can help fix it. Mr." He saved the file, closed the laptop, and looked toward Evelyn. For a heartbeat, she thought he might know she was awake, but he only whispered almost to himself, "Whoever did this." They knew exactly what they were doing. Then he turned off the lamp. The sound of the switch clicked softly. Darkness wrapped around the room again, leaving only the faint hum of the air conditioner and the steady tick of the clock. Evelyn lay still, heart-pounding as his footsteps faded down the corridor. When the elevator door finally shut behind him, she opened her eyes fully. The room felt colder now. She rose from the sofa, walked to her desk, and opened the laptop. The message glowed back at her. "You have a problem. I can help fix it." She stared at the initials. M.R. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass screen eyes, sharp now, alive with something between suspicion and wonder. "Who are you?" she whispered. Outside the window, the city lights blinked like distant stars. Somewhere far below in the maze of streets, a janitor with tired eyes walked home, unaware that the quiet choice he'd made tonight had just changed everything. And the clock kept ticking. Morning began with the kettle's thin whistle and the tick of a wall clock that never lied. In a small apartment, Michael Reyes moved through the galley kitchen like someone who trusted routine more than luck. Cups clicked. A spoon rang once and went quiet. The room smelled of toast and soap. "Morning," Daddy Lily said, hair-wild voice wrapped in sleep. "Morning, kiddo. Cereal or eggs cereal. With the fancy milk. It's the same milk, not when you pour it." He smiled into the steam and poured carefully, letting the milk hiss against the flakes. Through the thin wall came a neighbor's radio, old standards, a trumpet sighing. Pipes thunked in the building. The city tuned up for the day. "You're thinking," loud Lily said. "Am I?" "Your eyebrow does the thing." He eased it with 2 fingers. Better, less stormy. They ate in easy silence, fridge, hum kettle cooling a bus exhaling on the street. Michael watched her careful bites and thought as always, this is what matters. Food, rent, her smile. Everything else is noise. On the shelf, a photo faced the room, a woman with kind eyes holding a newborn in hospital stripes. The frame had a scratch at the corner. His gaze touched it and moved away the way a thumb touches a scar and releases. "Solar oven update," he said. "It'll work," Lily announced. Pizza box foil, black paper. Sunlight and heat held, like memory. She considered. "Then I'll keep the good kind." He slipped an apple and sandwich into a paper bag. Plastic crackled. He added a note he always wrote, "Be kind." A knock, 2 short, 1 long. Mrs. Green's rhythm. Michael opened the door to a cardigan, a soft cloud of rosewater and eyes that missed nothing. "Lasagna later," she said, handing over a foil pan. "Don't argue with an old woman who knows where the spare key is. I wouldn't dream of it. Nights again, 8 to 4. That hour steals from both ends," she murmured. "I'll sit with Lily if you're late. It's always trouble and you do it anyway." "That's what neighbors are for," she said, touching his forearm. "You're a good man, Michael. It leaks out of you." At the bus stop, the sidewalk offered its ordinary music, a bicycle chain, whispering leaves, skittering the slow gulp of a storm drain. Lily tucked her hand into his coat pocket. He closed his fingers around it. "Word of the day?" she asked. "Resilient." "Bend and return," she said, pleased. The bus arrived with a cushioned gasp. She turned on the step. "You'll come to science night, I will. No matter what, no matter what." She saluted and vanished into the diesel sigh. He listened until the bus's growl dissolved. Endings deserved witnesses. Back upstairs, the apartment felt too quiet. He washed the 2 bowls. Porcelain touched porcelain and sang a bright note. He opened his laptop. The bank portal loaded in a clinical font. Numbers lined up like verdicts. He split rent from groceries, set a reminder for the electric bill, and closed the lid. We're still breathing. In the hallway closet, a box waited, "Old Work." The cardboard rasped the floor. Inside, a lanyard from a conference 6 years ago, a notebook of diagrams, a flash drive taped inside a folded paper, crosshatched with networks. Sound returned the applause of a younger room. The sterile beeps of a hospital, months later machines cutting time into cruel squares. After the funeral code smelled like antiseptic. He took the janitor job because mopping floors never asked him to choose between right and almost right. He set the lid back, slid the box in, exhaled. By late afternoon, Lily burst in shoes, squeaking backpack zipper, purring. "My pizza box is going to boil water," she said. "Eventually." "Ambition," he said. "I like it." They ate Mrs. Green's lasagna at the little table. Forks pinged softly. Lily talked about Saturn's rings, about how the word fragile sounds like it's made of glass. Michael listened. Listening is how love sounds out loud. Homework dishes the day shrinking to its tender bones. Michael zipped his work bag. The zipper's teeth murmured closed. Daddy Lily asked from the doorway, holding a comb like a microphone. "Can I ask something?" "You can ask anything." "If no one is watching, does it still matter if we do the right thing?" The apartment paused. The fridge hummed a bass note. A neighbor laughed down the hall. He crouched to her height. He could smell the faint apple of her shampoo, hear the small wet click when she swallowed. "That's when it matters the most," he said, "because that's when only you will know." She waited, then nodded like someone setting a stone where it belongs. He hugged her elbows and heartbeat the anchor of his life. On the wall, the clock ticked 5 even beats. He let go on the 6th. "Text me when you get to Mrs. Green's every time." He shrugged into his jacket. The latch clicked. The hallway breathed cool air across his face. The stairwell carried his footfalls down in clean echoes. On the street, a siren unspooled and faded. At the bus stop, he looked east toward the river of glass towers. One held a top floor with a humming vent and a transfer screen that had glowed like a dare. Last night passed through him the back door's fingerprint, the quiet act of repair the note he left behind like a calling card he hadn't meant to carry. "You have a problem. I can help fix it." He slid his hands into his pockets and found the steady coin of his keys. "Do the right thing when no one is watching." The words settled under his ribs and held. The bus arrived. He climbed aboard. The card reader beeped once. Doors sighed shut. The city slipped into motion and the night began to gather its test. The sun rose behind glass towers that looked stronger than they were. From the 42nd floor of Echelon Tech, the city glittered distant, cold, and uncomfortably alive. Inside, Evelyn Carter stood before a wall of windows, her reflection floating over the skyline like a ghost who hadn't decided whether to stay or leave. The office was quiet except for the sound of the air system sighing through vents. Her heels clicked once, then stopped. She hadn't slept, not really. She'd changed clothes, fixed her makeup, but the fatigue sat behind her eyes like smoke. She whispered to herself, "What did you see?" Evelyn. On her desk, the laptop screen was dark now, the note still saved. "You have a problem. I can help fix it." She'd reread that line half a dozen times since dawn, tracing each letter, each pause. The man from last night, the janitor, had left fingerprints of brilliance in her code. And restraint. He could have stolen $500,000. Instead, he'd patched a hole her entire IT department had missed. She tried to find anger, but curiosity came first. The intercom crackled softly. "Miss Carter, Hannah's here." "Send her in," Evelyn said. Her voice sounded composed, practiced like the mask she wore every morning. Hannah Lee stepped in quietly, tablet tucked to her chest. She was 30 steady, and probably the only person who spoke to Evelyn like a human being rather than a job title. "Coffee?" Hannah asked. "I already drowned in 2 cups, Evelyn said, almost smiling. "Any word from the security team?" "Not yet, but—" There's chatter. "Evelyn, chatter about last night, someone saw you working late, then logs show a remote block on the finance servers. Daniel's asking questions. Evelyn's jaw tightened at the name. Daniel Shaw, the company's CFO, the man who'd mastered the art of pretending concern while plotting his next move. He would, she said quietly. Hannah hesitated. Evelyn, you can't keep doing this, staying until midnight running tests. It's not just exhaustion, it's desperation, Evelyn finished for her. Hannah lowered her eyes. I didn't say that. No, Evelyn said, but you thought it. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the city filling the space between them. Then Evelyn exhaled. Hannah, tell me something. If you didn't trust anyone on your own team, how would you find the truth? Hannah frowned. Depends what you're looking for. The line between loyalty and greed, Evelyn said. I thought I knew the people around me. I don't anymore. She crossed to her desk, touched the laptop. The reflection of her fingers shimmered against the black screen. I set up that transfer window on purpose. I wanted to see if temptation would bite, if someone would take what wasn't theirs. Hannah's breath caught. You mean, you staged it? Evelyn nodded slowly. I was the bait, but what I didn't expect was for someone to fix the system instead. She turned her voice softer now. A janitor of all people. Michael Reyes Hannah supplied quietly, glancing at her tablet. Night shift. Hired 9 months ago through an agency. Clean record. Single father. The words hung in the air, single father. Something shifted in Evelyn's chest. Did he know you were testing him? Hannah asked. No, Evelyn said. That's what makes it real. Hannah studied her for a moment. So what? Now Evelyn looked back at the skyline. Now I find out who he really is. Later that morning, Daniel Shaw walked into her office without knocking. He never did. He carried a folder under one arm and the scent of expensive cologne that always lingered too long. You look tired, he said lightly, burning the candle again. Both ends, middle and wick, she said flatly. What do you need, Daniel? He set the folder down. We've got investors circling like hawks. The breach rumors are back. If we don't calm them down, we're going to lose another client by Monday. Then calm them down. He gave a half smile. It's not that simple. They want reassurance that you have control. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her pen. I do. Then why was there unauthorized access on your personal terminal last night? Her gaze snapped up. You've been looking at my logs. I look at everything. It's my job. His tone was syrupy, but his eyes were sharp. Unless you've hired yourself a new cybersecurity consultant in secret. She smiled faintly, though it never reached her eyes. Would that bother you? Not if he knows what he's doing, Daniel said, leaning in. But if this company takes another hit, Evelyn, the board, won't stand behind you. They're losing patience, and so am I. He left the folder and walked out. The door closed with a soft hiss, but his words stayed like an echo. Evelyn waited until she was alone, then opened the folder. Financial charts, red lines, sharp declines, and beneath them a headline clipped from an article, Echelon Tech faces second breach in 6 months. Her throat tightened. Her father had built this company from nothing, a man who believed code could be poetry if written with integrity. He'd died 2 years ago, heart failure at 61, leaving her the throne and the wolves that came with it. She whispered almost to him, I'm trying, Dad, but they're eating the walls from the inside. She sat down and opened the laptop again. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. She navigated to the hidden log Michael had created. Every keystroke was clean, every move precise. Not the work of curiosity, it was craftsmanship. She noticed one more thing, a custom signature line in the code. Not a name, not a symbol. A logic pattern, old-fashioned elegant. Something she'd seen once before in archived frameworks from an obsolete startup. Her pulse picked up. That same logic had been credited to a man named Michael Reyes, years ago a CTO accused of negligence in a data leak scandal that nearly killed his company. Evelyn leaned back stunned. The janitor was once a prodigy. The irony pressed a bitter smile to her lips. The world loved building people up then, throwing them away when they stumbled. She knew that truth too well. She closed the laptop gently, the click sounding final. Hannah reappeared at the door, sensing the tension. "You okay?" she asked softly. Evelyn nodded. "I've made my decision. About what? About who I want to help me save this place." Hannah blinked. "You mean the janitor?" Evelyn's gaze turned toward the window where the sunlight sliced through the glass like a blade. "If everyone in this building is pretending," she said quietly, "then I'll put my faith in the one man who isn't." She turned, gathering her things, determination cutting through the fatigue. "Find out when his next shift starts." "What are you going to do?" Hannah asked. Evelyn's answer came calm and certain. "I'm going to thank him and see if the man who fixed my code last night can help me fix this company." The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, steady as breath. Outside, the skyline shimmered, unaware that somewhere between its towers 2 lives were about to collide again, one seeking redemption, the other truth. And the test that began in the dark had only just begun. The elevator groaned as it climbed toward the top floor of Echelon Tech. The city outside was already asleep, but inside the tower machines whispered like restless ghosts. The soft hum of servers filled the air with a low, steady pulse, a heartbeat of silicon and electricity. Michael Reyes stepped out of the elevator mop handle in handwork gloves stuffed into his back pocket. His shift was half over. Most nights he would start at the lower floors, but tonight he'd been reassigned to finish at the top. He didn't ask why. Janitors didn't ask. They just worked. Yet, as the elevator doors slid open and the corridor stretched before him, he felt it again, that sense from the night before. Something unfinished. Something waiting. The CEO's office door was shut, but a faint blue glow bled through the frosted glass. He hesitated, listening. Only the hum of the ventilation and the quiet rhythmic ticking of that same wall clock he'd heard last night. Michael swallowed. "You're just here to clean remember." Still, his feet moved forward on their own. He pushed the door open a few inches and the faint smell of coffee drifted out. The room was empty this time. No sleeping figure on the sofa, no trap disguised as carelessness. Just the desk, the laptop, and the steady whisper of the air conditioner. He stepped inside. The laptop screen was dark, but when he brushed the touchpad, the glow returned like an eye snapping open. The transfer window was gone. In its place, a clean desktop, empty but not innocent. He hesitated. She must have seen what I did. Michael knew he should close it, walk away, pretend none of this existed. But the instincts that once made him brilliant had never died. They'd just been buried beneath mops, rent receipts, and bedtime stories for his daughter. Now they woke. He opened the system log. What he saw made his stomach tighten, a faint trail of activity from earlier that day. Someone had been in here tracing his steps, examining the data he left behind. But they'd done something else too. They'd tried to cover their own tracks. A ghost cleaning after a ghost. Michael scrolled down, eyes narrowing. A second script had run briefly, a ping to an external address masked behind layers of encryption. He recognized the pattern instantly. He'd written something like it years ago, back when he believed code could make the world better before people proved otherwise. But this version wasn't his. It was dirtier, repurposed, corrupted. He whispered to the empty office, "Someone's still inside your walls, Evelyn." His fingers began to move again, slow and deliberate. He typed commands that looked meaningless to most, but told him stories, login traces, IP hops, access ports. He could hear his pulse syncing with the soft clicking of keys. The rhythm was old, comforting, dangerous. Line by line, the truth began to form. There was a hidden tunnel built into Echelon's core systems, something bypassing the internal firewall, slipping information to an external server registered offshore. Whoever installed it had skill and access. That last word chilled him. Access. It couldn't be an outsider. It had to be someone inside. He opened a new file, created a fresh log, and began recording everything: timestamps, data packets, the chain of commands. Then, quietly, he added a block, a small but powerful code that would temporarily halt the external connection without alerting the attacker. When he finished, he typed one short note beneath the lines: "You're not invisible. MR." He leaned back, exhaled, and rubbed his temples. The faint hum of the air vents sounded like wind in a tunnel. For a moment he thought of Lily, her voice from that morning small but certain. "It matters most when no one is watching." He smiled faintly. "Guess I learned from the best kid." Behind him, the office door clicked open. Michael turned sharply. Evelyn Carter stood in the doorway, half shadowed by the hall light, her expression unreadable. "I thought you'd come back," she said. Michael froze. "Ma'am, relax," she interrupted. Her heels clicked once on the marble floor as she stepped in. "You're not in trouble." He straightened, still unsure. "Then, what am I doing here? I was hoping you'd tell me." They stood across from each other, the janitor and the CEO divided by a desk and 1,000 unspoken questions. The air between them hummed, charged. "I checked the system this morning," Evelyn said. "You didn't take the money. I wasn't interested. But you found something," she continued. "Something none of my team has been able to detect for weeks." Michael hesitated. "There's a back door in your network. It's sending encrypted packets to an offshore address. Someone inside this company is leaking data." Her eyes sharpened. "You're certain?" "As certain as I can be, without full access." She moved closer, voice dropping. "Then, tell me, Mr. Reyes, how does a janitor recognize something like that?" He looked at her, searching for sarcasm, but found curiosity instead. "Because I used to build them," he said quietly. "Firewalls, networks, a long time ago." Evelyn's breath caught. "You were in tech, CTO," he said simply, "before everything went sideways." She studied him as if trying to fit that truth into the man standing before her in faded overalls and worn shoes. Why walk away from that? He gave a small, tired smile. "Sometimes doing the right thing costs more than you can pay." Their eyes met, two people carrying different versions of the same exhaustion. Evelyn broke the silence first. "You realize if what you're saying is true, someone high up is betraying us." "I figured as much," he said. "That's why I made a copy of the log. You should have it." He plugged in a small drive and transferred the data. The faint chime of completion filled the room. Evelyn took it carefully, her fingers brushing his for a fraction of a second, an accidental spark neither mentioned. "What will you do with it?" he asked. "Find whoever's responsible," she said. "And then fix what's left." Michael nodded. "Then you'll need more than a janitor." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly, half gratitude, half challenge. "Maybe. But for now, that janitor just saved this company another sleepless night." He turned to leave, but she stopped him at the door. "Michael." He turned. "Why did you really come back tonight?" He paused, considering. "Because it didn't feel finished?" She watched him disappear down the hallway, the echo of his steps fading into the hum of the tower. When he was gone, Evelyn sat at her desk and opened the log file. The code scrolled endlessly across the screen, intricate and clean. She touched the words he'd written at the bottom. "You're not invisible." Her reflection shimmered faintly in the monitor's glow. She whispered, "Neither are you." Mr. Reyes. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere in the building, a clock ticked its patient rhythm, keeping time for both of them one step closer to the truth neither of them yet saw coming. Morning came hard and bright. Sunlight bounced off the mirrored towers of downtown, too clean for the mess about to unfold inside Echelon Tech. Michael walked through the revolving glass doors with the weariness of someone who hadn't slept. He'd spent half the night replaying his conversation with Evelyn Carter, the way she'd looked at him, the trust in her voice, the spark of something he hadn't felt in years. He reminded himself, "You're a janitor, not a savior." He clocked in at the security desk and headed toward the maintenance wing mop bucket rattling softly behind him. But before he reached the elevator, a voice called from across the lobby. "Mr. Reyes." A security guard approached, polite but firm. "Miss Carter would like to see you upstairs. Right now." Michael's stomach dropped. He nodded, parked the cart, and followed the guard to the executive floor. The ride up felt slower than usual, each floor ding like a countdown. When the doors opened, he was met not just by Evelyn, but by two others. Hannah stood quietly near the window, concern written on her face, and beside Evelyn, like a shadow-given form, was Daniel Shaw. The CFO's smile was too smooth. "Ah, the man of the hour," Daniel said. "Come in, Mr. Reyes." Michael stepped inside. The air felt heavier here. The blinds were half closed, slicing the sunlight into bars across the carpet. He felt like he was walking into an interrogation. Evelyn's tone was calm but formal. "Thank you for coming up, Michael. Have a seat." He stayed standing. "If this is about the system." "Oh, it's about the system," Daniel interrupted, flipping open a folder. "Specifically about your unauthorized access last night. You were seen tampering with the CEO's laptop. Care to explain?" Hannah shifted uneasily. Evelyn said nothing. Michael took a breath. "I wasn't tampering. I was fixing a problem." Daniel laughed, once short and sharp. "Fixing a problem. That's a creative way to describe breaking into a confidential account." Evelyn's voice cut through his. "Let him speak." Daniel's smile thinned, but he leaned back. "By all means." Michael looked at Evelyn, then back to Daniel. "I found a back door in the company's network. Someone's leaking data to an external server. I stopped it, and I left a record of everything I did in the system logs. You can verify it yourself." Daniel waved the folder. "Oh, we did. And guess what? Those logs you created are the only evidence we have of this supposed breach, which means you could have fabricated it entirely." Michael's pulse quickened, but his voice stayed even. "If I wanted to steal, you wouldn't have a company left to accuse me of it." For a moment, silence hung between them. Even Daniel blinked. Evelyn's expression softened almost imperceptibly. She turned to Hannah. "Pull up the file he created." Hannah nodded, tapping quickly on her tablet. Within seconds, the screen on the wall came alive, lines of code system logs, timestamps. Michael's name appeared next to each action, every change documented precisely. Daniel's confidence faltered. "This proves nothing." "Wait," Hannah interrupted. She scrolled down. "Look here. The same external IP shows up before Michael accessed the system. Multiple entries. He's telling the truth." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. And who had clearance at that time? Daniel's jaw tightened. Mid-level admin access. Could be anyone. Could it? Evelyn's tone cooled, because those sessions originated from an internal terminal on the finance floor. Your floor? The room froze. Daniel's hand twitched toward the folder, but Evelyn's gaze cut him off. "Do you have an explanation?" she asked. He cleared his throat. "Of course, probably a shared workstation." "Anyone could have enough," she said quietly. Her authority didn't need volume. It was colder, heavier. Hannah stood motionless. Michael didn't move either. He'd seen this kind of moment before, the instant power shifted when truth finally started leaking through the cracks. Evelyn turned to Michael. "You saved this company from something we didn't even see coming." He shook his head. "I didn't save anything. Not yet, I just delayed it." She studied him, curiosity flickering behind exhaustion. "How did you recognize that code so fast?" He hesitated. "Because I've seen it before. A long time ago I worked in cybersecurity, built systems like yours. I used to think they could protect people, but they can't protect greed." "Why are you cleaning floors instead of running teams?" Daniel muttered. "Did your brilliance run out?" Michael's jaw flexed, but he didn't rise to it. "My wife got sick. I stayed home to care for her. The company I built fell apart, and when it did, I took the blame for something I didn't do." For the first time, Evelyn's expression softened fully. She saw it, the quiet weight of a man who'd already paid for integrity once. Daniel scoffed. "A touching story. But sob stories don't erase the fact that Evelyn's voice cut like glass. "Daniel, I think we're done here." He stared at her. "Excuse me, you heard me. I'll handle this from here." Daniel gathered his papers jaw tight and stormed out the door, slamming behind him. The room fell still again. The only sound was the clock ticking above the door, steady, unbothered. Evelyn let out a breath. "You didn't have to defend yourself like that." Michael gave a faint, tired smile. "Didn't have a choice. People like him only believe what fits their narrative." "Then let me offer you a new one." He looked up. She held out her hand. "Help me find whoever's behind this. Officially, you won't be just a janitor, you'll be my cybersecurity consultant. I'll pay you what you're worth." Michael blinked, stunned. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," she said. "You saw temptation last night and chose honesty. You saw danger and chose to fix it. I trust that more than any resume." He wanted to say yes. God part of him ached to, but another part hesitated. The ghosts of late night's hospital monitors, broken promises, whispered warnings he couldn't quite silence. "I have to think about it," he said finally. "Of course," Evelyn replied. Her tone stayed gentle, but something in her eyes said she wanted him to accept. "You've got my number now. Don't take too long. We need you." He nodded, turning to leave. Just before the door closed, her voice reached him again. "Mr. Reyes." He glanced back. "If I asked you to return to your old life to help me save this company." She paused, searching his face. "Would you dare?" He didn't answer, but the faint smile that touched his lips said enough. As the elevator doors closed behind him, the ticking of that clock echoed in his head, as if counting down to something larger than either of them yet understood. The test had changed. Now it was no longer about temptation, but about trust. The next morning, Michael woke before dawn. The apartment was still washed in that gray pre-sunlight that made everything feel temporary. He lay there for a moment, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying Evelyn Carter's voice from yesterday. "You won't be just a janitor, you'll be my cybersecurity consultant." He hadn't slept well since. The offer had burned a quiet hole in his mind all night. It wasn't the job that scared him, it was what it might wake inside him again. He turned toward the small bed by the wall. Lily was still asleep, her hair fanned across the pillow, one hand clutching her stuffed bear. He smiled faintly. That was his reason for everything, and also sometimes the reason he hesitated. He whispered to himself, "You've already lost one world, Michael. Can you risk another?" The kettle began its soft hiss in the kitchen. Morning slid into motion. Later that day, Evelyn waited in her office with 2 mugs of coffee growing cold. The city outside glittered with late morning heat. She'd told herself she was being patient, that he needed time to think, but every minute without a response made her wonder if she'd asked too much of him. Hannah leaned against the doorway, watching her boss pace. "You've checked your phone 6 times, she said softly. 7, Evelyn corrected. Then sighed. "Do I look desperate?" Hannah smiled. "Maybe just determined." Evelyn laughed quietly. "I can work with that." When her office phone finally rang, she nearly dropped the mug. Ms. Carter Michael's voice came through, low, cautious. "Mr. Reyes, I was starting to think you'd gone back into hiding." "I don't hide," he said. "I just think before I jump." "Then tell me," she said, "have you thought enough to say yes?" A pause. "Maybe, but I have conditions." Her lips curved. "I'm listening." That afternoon, Evelyn found herself standing in front of a modest apartment building on the west side, paint-peeling window boxes, half alive, the kind of place where life ran on small routines and quiet resilience. She wasn't sure what she expected. Michael had insisted they meet on his turf before he made a decision. "You should see what you'd be hiring," he'd said. When the door opened, she was met not by him, but by a woman in her 70s, with bright eyes and a gentle smile. "You must be Ms. Carter," the woman said. "I'm Mrs. Green, the next-door troublemaker." Evelyn smiled. "Pleasure to meet you." Mrs. Green ushered her inside without hesitation. "He's finishing up in the kitchen. Lily's been dying to meet you. She thinks you're a movie star." Evelyn blinked. "Oh dear." A small voice piped up from the living room. "Daddy, she is pretty like one." Evelyn turned. Lily stood there with wide, curious eyes and a cautious smile that mirrored her father's. She wore a t-shirt spattered with paint and held a half-finished solar oven made of a pizza box and aluminum foil. Michael appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "She's not wrong," he said softly. "Evelyn, this is my daughter Lily." The CEO, who'd faced down boardrooms without blinking, suddenly found herself nervous. "Hi, Lily," she said, kneeling slightly. "Your dad tells me you're building something impressive." Lily's eyes lit up. "It's for the science fair. It can melt chocolate." "That sounds dangerous," Evelyn teased gently. "It's controlled danger," Lily said very seriously, earning a laugh from both adults. They all sat together at the small kitchen table. The room smelled like coffee and old books, the kind of comfort Evelyn hadn't felt in years. She looked around the mismatched chairs, the watercolor drawings on the fridge, the photo of Michael and his wife taken long before tragedy carved its silence. "This is home," she said quietly. Michael poured her coffee. "It's small, but it's ours." Lily took a sip of milk and looked between them. "So, are you my dad's new boss?" Evelyn smiled. "Something like that. I'm trying to convince him to come work for me again." Lily's brow furrowed. "You mean, not be a janitor anymore?" "Yes." Michael shot her a gentle look. "We'll see, kiddo." Lily turned to Evelyn, eyes wide. "He's really smart, you know. He built me a robot from an old vacuum." Evelyn's heart softened. "I believe it." As they talked, she saw more of Michael than she had in any boardroom, the patience in the way he listened to his daughter, the quiet pride when Lily spoke the subtle shadow that crossed his eyes when conversation brushed too close to the past. Finally, when Mrs. Green took Lily out to water the plants, Evelyn and Michael sat in rare quiet. "You didn't have to invite me here," Evelyn said. "I did," he replied, "because I can't take this job unless you understand what it means. If I work with you, the hours won't be simple. The press might dig up my past. And Lily, she's already lost enough stability." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Then we make it flexible. You'll work from home when you need to. I'll protect your anonymity for now. We'll find a balance." He studied her face. "Why are you doing this? You could hire anyone." She hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because I've built a company full of people who say the right things but never mean them. Last night you didn't have to do the right thing, but you did. I trust that." Michael looked down at his hands. They were scarred, rough, the hands of a man who'd rebuilt his life from concrete and apology. He finally said, "If I agree, I'm not doing this for a title or a paycheck. I'm doing it because I can't stand watching good work rot from the inside again." Evelyn's voice softened. "Then we're the same." Their eyes met, something unspoken passing between them. It wasn't romance yet, not exactly, but it was the kind of understanding that could become it, two people recognizing their own broken edges in each other. The sound of laughter returned as Lily ran back inside with Mrs. Green, her hair damp from the watering can. She held up a wilted flower triumphantly. "We saved it." Michael smiled. "Just in time." Evelyn glanced at the clock. Speaking of time, she said, standing, "I'll draft the paperwork. You can start Monday. Or whenever feels right." He nodded. "Monday, then." Lily grinned. "Does that mean we can celebrate?" Michael looked at her, then at Evelyn. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It does." As Evelyn stepped out into the hallway, she turned back. Michael was laughing softly with his daughter, the light of something new flickering in his tired eyes. For the first time in years, Evelyn Carter didn't feel like she was standing on a ledge. She felt like she'd stepped onto something solid. And somewhere deep down, Michael Reyes knew that opening that door for her had just opened one inside himself, one that led back to the man he'd almost forgotten he could be. The boardroom at Echelon Tech looked more like a cathedral than a meeting space, high ceilings, glass walls, and a table so polished it reflected the faces gathered around it. Morning light bled through the blinds, sharp as a blade. Daniel Shaw sat at the head, though technically it wasn't his seat. Evelyn wasn't there yet, and Daniel had a habit of filling every absence with his presence. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and began. "Before we start," he said smoothly, "I think we all need to talk about the elephant in the room." The others shifted in their chairs. Board members, department heads, senior managers, people who had built careers on appearances. Evelyn Carter. Daniel continued, "Wants to bring a janitor into our cybersecurity division." A janitor. Not a consultant, not a vetted expert. A man who cleans floors at night. Murmurs spread like ripples across water. "Surely this isn't serious," said one of the older members, Mr. Greer. "We're talking about classified systems." Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and rehearsed. "Serious enough that she's already given him limited access. She claims he stopped a breach no one else could detect. But I dug into his past. The man's name is Michael Reyes, former CTO of a startup that collapsed after a data scandal. He was accused of negligence, walked away before the investigation closed." He paused for effect. "Now he's here sweeping our hallways. Does that sound like someone we can trust?" No one answered right away. The silence tasted like fear. When Evelyn entered 10 minutes later, conversation snapped shut. Her heels clicked like punctuation. She looked calm, even regal, but her eyes were razor-sharp. "Morning," she said evenly, setting her folder on the table. "I see Daniel has started without me." Daniel smiled thinly. "Just bringing everyone up to speed." "Good. Then you know why we're here." She opened the folder, revealing printed logs and audit reports. 3 weeks of intrusion attempts, all traced to internal access points. And one man, one janitor, was the only person to notice. He stopped a potential leak that could have cost us millions. Daniel's voice cut in smooth as ever, or he planted it first so he could play the hero later. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "You have proof." He hesitated. "His past speaks for itself." "Then let's talk about the past," she said, stepping closer. "Michael Reyes took the fall for a data leak 6 years ago. You know what the internal report actually said, that he took responsibility to protect another engineer, a single father who'd made a critical mistake. He could have exposed the truth and saved his career. He didn't." The room shifted. Eyes darted. A few cleared their throats. Daniel forced a chuckle. "That's a nice story, but we don't make business decisions on sentiment." "Maybe we should start," Evelyn replied. "Because the last time we ignored integrity for convenience, we lost half our engineering team." Her tone softened, but her words carried weight. "You all hired me to clean up this company's mess to rebuild its credibility. That doesn't happen with people who know how to lie beautifully. It happens with people who do the right thing when no one's watching." Her gaze swept across the room, steady and clear. "That's why I'm giving Michael Reyes a chance." Daniel's jaw flexed. "The board won't approve it. Then the board can explain to our investors why a security genius walked out the door because we were too proud to recognize him." The silence that followed wasn't agreement, but it wasn't resistance either. It was the silence of people realizing she'd already won. Later that afternoon, Evelyn found Michael in the lower server room, sleeves rolled, laptop open on a wheeled cart. The soft glow of monitors painted his face in shades of blue. "I heard the fireworks upstairs," he said without looking up. Evelyn smirked. "You heard that, huh?" "Hard not to. Sound travels through vents." "Well," she said, folding her arms, "you've officially been labeled the most controversial hire in Echelon history." He chuckled softly. "Not my first time on that list." Her expression softened. "I went to bat for you. Daniel's not happy. Let me guess, he never is." "Correct," she said. Then after a beat, "But I think I made my point." Michael finally looked up. "Why fight for me, Evelyn? You barely know me." She hesitated, leaning against a nearby desk. "Because I've been where you are. Misjudged, cornered. You can't rebuild trust in others until someone shows you it still exists. He studied her for a moment, then went back to typing. You know what I admire about you? What's that? You didn't deny the company's broken pieces, you just decided to start picking them up. She smiled faintly. That's because no one else would. They fell into a comfortable quiet, the hum of servers filling the air. Then Michael spoke again, his tone more serious. Daniel won't stop. He's got too much to lose. People like him, when they feel threatened, they bite. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Then, let him bite. I'm not afraid of him. You should be careful, Michael said quietly. I've seen men like him before. They don't attack head-on, they rot the foundation from underneath. Her eyes met his. Then we'll reinforce the walls. For a long moment, neither spoke. There was something unspoken in that exchange, a partnership forming in the quiet, built not on attraction, yet, but on recognition. Two people who knew what it was like to stand alone too long. Finally, she asked, Can I ask what really happened back then? The company you lost? Michael's fingers paused over the keyboard. He took a slow breath. We were young, hungry, and stupidly idealistic. I built a security framework so tight it could have been military grade. But one of my team, someone I trusted, sold access to a competitor. When the breach hit, the press wanted a villain. I gave them one. Me. Evelyn's voice softened. You sacrificed yourself for someone else? He shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I just didn't want my daughter to grow up watching her father destroy another family. Evelyn said nothing for a moment. Then she whispered, If you've carried that alone all these years, you deserve someone to carry it with you now. He looked at her, a small, grateful smile flickering at the corners of his mouth. Careful, Miss Carter. That almost sounded like compassion. Don't tell the board, she said. They'd call it weakness. He shook his head. Then maybe weakness is what this place needs. That evening, as Evelyn returned to her office, Hannah met her at the elevator. You might want to know, she said quietly, Daniel's been making calls to investors, spinning the story his way. Evelyn's steps didn't falter. Let him talk. Words are easy. Hannah frowned. You sure you can handle him? Evelyn glanced at the city skyline outside the glass. No, she said, but I know someone who can. Down in the server room, Michael was still working his screen filled with streams of code, the quiet rhythm of his keystrokes steady as a heartbeat. He didn't know it yet, but the storm was already forming above his head. And for the first time in years, he was ready to face it. The first alarm didn't scream. It chirped a polite ping from a corner monitor, then multiplied. Pings became pulses. Pulses became a braided whine racing through the server floor like a fuse catching fire. Michael looked up from his terminal. No, not now. On the glass above his desk, red banners unfurled. Unauthorized outbound traffic. Credential anomalies. Packet spikes across nodes that had been quiet all week. His phone buzzed. Evelyn. He answered before the second vibration. What are you seeing? She asked, breath clipped controlled. A coordinated push, he said. They're in 3 doors at once. Finance CRM and a sandbox that shouldn't even be visible. How through the back door's cousins, he said. Variants. Someone learned from what I blocked. I'm coming down, she said. Meet me in the war room. He hung up and ran. The hallway's LED lights hummed like stern voices. In the elevator, he felt the cables sing above his head a low iron moan. His brain sorted possibilities at speed. If they lifted customer data, the company would bleed out by morning. If they altered ledgers, they'd die on the floor tonight. The war room door hissed open. Inside the room was already hot with bodies and bad news. Screens covered the walls. Graphs spiking maps blinking the company's circulatory system lit up like a neon X-ray. Phones rang. A printer chattered. Somewhere, someone's pen clicked and clicked and clicked. Hannah slid a laptop toward him. We're seeing traffic from 6 countries. 2 will be decoys, he said. Kill the noise. I want origin paths only. She typed. Michael took the center station plugged in and felt his old reflexes lock into place. He could hear the server floor through 3 walls, the harmony of fans and drives like distant surf churning. Evelyn strode in hairpinned back voice, steady. Status. Waves, Michael said. They're probing and pulling at the same time. Whoever's orchestrating this knows our architecture. Daniel shouldered through behind her, feigning calm. If this gets out, he said to no one in particular. We're finished. PR needs talking points. PR needs silence, Michael said without looking up. We need isolation. Segment the network. Finance to vault mode. CRM to read only. Shut guest Wi-Fi. No external vendor tunnels. Who put him in charge? Daniel snapped. I did, Evelyn said. Do what he says. Orders rippled. The room's sound sharpened keycaps, snapping headsets, squeaking into position a chorus of copy on it done. Michael's screen lit with a new surge. He spoke fast, crisp. They're pushing through the analytics cluster, spawning processes named after system demons. Elegant. Ugly. Can we block? Hannah asked. Not yet, he said. If we slam the door, they scatter and return smarter. We shepherd them. He opened a fresh window, hands moving with the old certainty that had nothing to do with ego and everything to do with muscle memory. I'm building a honeypot. Daniel scoffed. A trap. Cute. A mirror, Michael corrected. We give them a perfect fake. Realistic tables, believable latency. They'll tunnel deeper because they think they're winning. Can you make it convincing? Evelyn asked. Michael heard the question beneath the question. Can you do this really? He didn't flinch. I can make it irresistible. He typed breath even. Synthetic customer records spun up names that sounded genuine purchase histories with plausible noise. He seeded the database with a few minor corruptions, the kind real systems carry like freckles so it would smell right. Then he placed a threadbare seam where the tunnel would snag a hairline fracture leading to the true origin. Ready, he said. Reroute their path from analytics to honey. Hannah, shadow copy everything they touch. Shadow on, she said. The attack tunneled. The room listened to the quiet tick of the wall clock for 3 beats. Then the honeypot lit like a Christmas parade. They bought it, Michael murmured. Let them chew. On another wall, outbound traffic surged and then steadied a thief's breathing when the safe finally turned sweet. Michael watched the metadata stream, patient. Come on, he whispered. Show me the hand. A new pulse arrived, subtle, different. A control signal, not harvest. It came from inside the company. Hannah's tone lowered. Michael? I see it, he said. An internal orchestrator kicking commands. The cadence is human, not automated. Someone is live driving this. From where Evelyn asked. He cross-referenced timestamps and internal routes, fingers drumming once on the desk, 1, 2, 3, and stopped. The answer sat there in grayscale, a terminal cluster with elevated privileges. Finance. Subnet, 10.12.44. The same floor as Daniel's team. Daniel moved closer to the screen, voice brittle. Plenty of people use finance terminals. Not with this signature, Michael said. The keystroke spacing command order, it's the same as the earlier backdoor management. This is an operator, not a script kiddie. Daniel's mouth thinned. Are you accusing me? I'm describing the picture, Michael said evenly. If your face fits, that's physics, not accusation. Evelyn cut in firm. Later, we stop the bleed first. Michael. He nodded. He could feel Lily in the back of his mind, her small voice asking for the right thing in the quiet. He made a choice. Time to close, he said. We've drained enough breadcrumbs. Hannah, on my mark, sever the external link at the edge gateway. Legal timestamp, everything. Ops announce a maintenance window to cover the cut. Evelyn stood beside him, presence like a steadying hand. Mark when ready. Michael waited. The honeypot fed and fed. The control signal pulsed again, impatient now. There. He saw the path fold just enough to expose the real endpoint behind the VPN daisy chain. Offshore registry, yes, but the leasing company pointed to a boutique host group used by mid-market finance shops. A pattern, a partner, a friend of someone in-house. Mark, he said. Hannah's keystrokes cracked the room. External link severed. Outbound collapsed. On the boards, red faded to amber to cautious green. The room exhaled as one organism headset's lowering shoulders dropping a chorus of relieved curses. Containment holding an engineer reported. No confirmed exfiltration from production. Honeypot drained. Michael's throat eased for the first time in an hour. He ran a final diff on core tables. Clean. They'd been lucky. No, that wasn't luck. That was a team hearing a voice and trusting it. He turned to Evelyn. "You're safe for tonight." She held his gaze gratitude unhidden. "We're safe because of you." Then carefully, "And we have a trail." Hannah tapped her screen. The internal controller tried to shut itself down when the cut hit. It wrote a wipe script to the terminal. I quarantined the host before it completed. "Whose terminal?" Evelyn asked. Hannah swallowed. "The tag maps to Finance Cluster 7. Privilege Group, CFO Ops." The room changed temperature. People didn't look at Daniel, they looked near him. He lifted his chin. "Privilege Group doesn't mean me." "Then you won't mind handing over your devices," Evelyn said, voice quiet as snow. "And access to your floor's audit room." "I'll call the general counsel," Daniel said. "No one touches my equipment without the door opened." Security stood there, not theatrical, just present. The captain's radio hissed softly. Evelyn didn't raise her voice. "Take Mr. Shaw to Conference C. Hold until legal arrives. No one else leaves finance without my authorization." Daniel laughed, a dry, cracking sound. "This is outrageous." On what grounds? Evelyn looked at Michael's screen, then back at Daniel. On the grounds that something rotted the foundation. "We're going to see whether it's you." Security guided him out. The door clicked shut. The war room's noise resumed thinner now, like the aftersound of a storm slipping past the building. Michael leaned on the desk, finally feeling the fatigue. He thought of calling Mrs. Green, of asking her to tell Lily, "Your dad did the right thing again." He reached for his phone. An alert bloomed on his monitor. Not red, not loud, small, specific. Hannah leaned in. "What is that?" Michael's mouth went dry. The quarantined finance terminal had just tried to beacon out again through a backup modem none of them knew existed. A failover he hadn't planned for. A hand behind the hand. He stared at the trace at the new path snaking out of a hidden line not from Daniel's machine this time, but from a second device on his floor. He heard the clock tick once, then twice. "Evelyn," he said slowly, eyes fixed on the screen. "We've got another operator inside." The room went silent, where she asked. He followed the line with his cursor, every nerve awake. Right next to Daniel's office. He zoomed and a workstation ID filled the screen. Hannah inhaled. "That's not possible." Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper that didn't shake. "Whose terminal is it, Michael?" He read the name, felt the room tilt and knew the night wasn't over. The building woke to the sound of printers and whispers. Paper slid from trays in neat size. Doors clicked. Shoes made soft negotiations with carpet. Overnight, the war room had cooled from fever to a measured pulse. Containment held. The clock above the glass wall ticked like a metronome reminding everyone to breathe. Evelyn stood before a mirror the size of a shield and pinned back her hair. Down the hall, microphones were being tested, check, each pop a small thunder. A press conference at $9. Not to spin, not this time. To tell the truth while it was still warm. Hannah peeked in. "They're ready. Investors." "In the front row," Hannah said. "Press behind them. Legal wants you to stick to the prepared remarks." "I'll try," Evelyn said. She wouldn't. They walked together, heels tapping radios, hissing the building's circulatory system back to its ordinary arrogance. In the last hour of night, security had sealed Finance Cluster 7 and the adjoining workstation the second beacon labeled Act Assist in 12. Legal said to say under investigation. Evelyn heard close. She didn't like either. When she stepped up to the podium, cameras coughed awake. The room rustled, stilled. "Good morning," she began. The mic caught the low warmth in her voice. "I owe you the truth." A collective inhale, the delicious hush of people ready to feed. "Last night," she said, "Echelon stopped an orchestrated breach of our systems. We're suspending several employees pending investigation, including members of our finance operations. We will cooperate fully with authorities. We are not perfect, but today we are honest." A murmur pressed the back wall and fell away. "And I want to acknowledge someone by name. He works nights. He cleans the floors you walk on. He saw what others missed, and he stood between us and a disaster." Silence sharpened. "His name is Michael Reyes." Cameras pivoted as if the room itself turned to look for him. But Michael wasn't there. He was 3 floors down, sitting on the edge of a server room chair listening on Hannah's phone. The applause rose like a tide he had not expected and did not know how to ride. He closed his eyes. The sound rolled through him, strange, heavy kind. The last time applause had reached him, it had tasted of ambition and neon. This tasted like water. Hannah's voice softened through the line. "They're standing Michael." He didn't answer. He was busy remembering a hospital monitor's stale beeping and the promise he'd made to Lily in a parking lot under a broken street lamp. "We'll choose what's right, even when it costs us the easy version of our life." When it ended, the reporters snapped back to their roles. "Ms. Carter is the CFO implicated." "We're investigating privileged access on his floor," Evelyn said. "I won't speculate." "Where did the attack originate?" "Externally routed. Internally orchestrated." "Who is this janitor, this Mr. Reyes? What's his background?" Evelyn's gaze slid over the crowd, calm. "He can answer that himself if he chooses. What matters is what he did when no one was watching." The clock above the back door clicked to 9:17. Interviews reset. The day moved. By afternoon, the building sounded different. Lighter somehow, like a room after someone has opened a window. HR badges deactivated with polite dings. IT staff whispered on headsets. Legal's printers issued careful thunder. Michael's terminal displayed a new title beneath his name, Chief Security Architect Interim, courtesy of Evelyn's signature, and a legal small print that promised review post-crisis. He snorted softly. Hannah appeared with 2 coffees. "You don't have to hate the title." "I don't," he said. "I just don't need it to do the work. You're allowed to be proud, you know." He took the cup. "Pride's loud. I'm busy listening." They reviewed logs until the numbers soothed themselves into patterns. The second beacon, Act Assist 12, tied to a workstation belonging to a temporary contractor on Daniel's floor. The contractor had disappeared at 6 a.m. Badge dropped in a stairwell phone, wiped. It stank of convenience and a hand above a hand. "We'll find the hand," Michael murmured. Hannah studied him. "You always sound." "Sure." "I'm not," he said, "but Lily needs me to behave like I am." The way he said her name warmed the room. That evening, after calls with federal contacts and an internal town hall that felt more like group therapy, Evelyn sent a text, "Dinner, not work. Just dinner." Michael stared at it in the elevator, the cables whispering their iron lullaby. He typed, "With Lily or without." "With," she replied almost at once. "If she's willing." "She will be." He said aloud to the empty car, surprised at the certainty. They chose a diner with soft booths and soft lighting, and a bell above the door that chimed like a memory. The grill sighed. A milkshake machine spoke in patient circles. Forks chimed porcelain. Comfort talked in that place. Lily slid into the booth, sneakers squeaking, eyes bright. "Ms. Carter, Evelyn," she corrected gently. "Evelyn, did you see the video where a guy cooks a steak on an engine?" Evelyn blinked. "Should I be worried about what you watch online?" "She watches science," Michael said. "And raccoons stealing cat food," educational Lily insisted. "Raccoons have fingers. They ordered pancakes at dinner because life sometimes needs permission." Lily drowned hers in syrup. Michael cut his with the concentration of a surgeon. Evelyn added butter because the knight had asked everything and she wanted to answer with softness where she could. Conversation slipped easily between them. Lily told the saga of the solar oven, its triumph melting chocolate, its failure with a marshmallow that turned into a resigned ghost. Evelyn confessed she'd once shorted an outlet trying to build a robot hand out of paper clips. Michael listened the sound of their voices braiding into a rope he hadn't realized he'd been climbing all day. When Lily ran to the restroom, Evelyn and Michael sat in a sudden, friendly quiet. "You were good today," she said. "Steady. More luck than talent." "Don't do that," she said gently. "Don't make yourself smaller to fit how people used to see you." He took a breath. The clock above the milkshake machine ticked. "I don't want her hurt," he said, nodding toward the hallway Lily had disappeared into. The headlines. The gossip at school. "She's resilient, but we've already spent so much on resilience." Evelyn's voice lowered. "I can't promise to be a soft place to land. My life is sharp, but I can promise to stand where the sharp edges are so they don't hit her first." He looked at her, then really looked. The steel, yes, but also the fatigue that wasn't brittle anymore. It had turned into something tempered by use. "Who does that for you?" he asked. She smiled without showing teeth. "I hire them," she said, "and sometimes I ask them to dinner." He laughed, and it came out like relief. Lily returned, flopping into the booth. "Can we go on the roof after Daddy says the city sounds different up there?" "It does," Evelyn said. "It's where I make decisions I don't want to regret." They climbed the last short flight to the roof. The door's hinge complained. The night answered with a cool hand. Below the city exhaled sirens, distant and tired, a helicopter muttering to itself, the river wearing its soft chain of lights. They stood near the edge, not close enough to tempt gravity. Lily leaned into Michael's side, his arm wrapping her in a long familiarity. Evelyn stood a foot away, then 6 inches, then not quite touching. The wind lifted, and with it the scent of rain that wasn't there yet. "Listen," Michael said. They did. The clock in Evelyn's head, that relentless metronome, fell into rhythm with the city's own, the HVAC unit's purr, the thin whir of distant traffic, the tiny clicks the safety light made when it cooled. Her breath slowed to match. "Thank you," she said to both of them, and the words felt like they fit their mouths. Lily tilted her face up. "Are you two going to be like a team?" "We already are," Evelyn said. "Do teams have movie nights?" Lily asked. "They do, if they're the good kind," Michael said. The wind shifted, bringing the far-off peal of a church bell counting 9. Evelyn's phone buzzed. She ignored it. Michael's did too. He didn't look. Then from somewhere below, faint and urgent, came a sound like the end of a sentence, the elevator's alarm, a shrill stuttering cry that bled into the night. Hannah's name flashed on Evelyn's screen. Evelyn answered. "Talk to me." Her face changed. When A beat, how many another? "Lock it down. I'm on my way." She ended the call. "The contractor didn't run," she said quietly. "He's here. Someone let him back in." Michael felt the clock inside him restart, brutal and precise. He squeezed Lily's shoulder and said too calmly, "Mrs. Green is downstairs. Walk her home." Lily's eyes scanned their faces, learning a language she already hated. She nodded, brave beyond her years. Evelyn met Michael's gaze. The city's sounds fell away. Only the tick of the red safety light remained. "This isn't over," she said. "No," he replied. "It's just choosing its form." They turned toward the stairwell together, steps quickening the door's hinge, crying out as if it knew what waited below. And somewhere deep inside the building, an old clock kept time impartial, as truth as the next test set its teeth. The morning headlines were merciless. From janitor to hero, the man who saved Echelon Tech. CEO and the cleaner, an unlikely alliance, or something more. By sunrise, the story had outgrown the building. News vans lined the curb, cameras blinked like hungry eyes, and by noon, half the city had an opinion. Michael stared at his phone, the articles reflecting off the cracked screen. His name had become a spectacle again, just like before. Only this time, it wasn't scandal. It was curiosity. But curiosity, he knew, could still burn. Lily sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, eating cereal too slowly. She'd already seen the headlines at school. Kids whispered. Some called her tech princess. Others asked if her dad was rich now. He'd brushed it off with a smile, but the truth hung in the air between spoonfuls. "Daddy," she said quietly, "are we going to be on TV?" He shook his head. "No, sweetheart. We don't need that kind of noise. People were talking about Ms. Carter," she said. "They said you're her boyfriend." He froze, then laughed too quickly. "That's not exactly how it works." She tilted her head. "Do you like her?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. "She's complicated. Like math. Exactly like math," he said, and she giggled. But inside his chest ached. When Lily left for school, the apartment felt heavier. Mrs. Green stopped by, setting a plate of scones on the counter. Her eyes, kind and too knowing, studied him for a moment. "You're on every channel," she said softly. "Quite the handsome hero." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't ask for any of it." "Maybe not," she said, "but you earned the right kind of attention." "Don't shrink from it, Michael." "Not this time." He sighed. "It's not just about me anymore." Mrs. Green leaned against the counter. "You're afraid of what people will say. I get it. But let me tell you something, people will always talk. You can't build your life around their volume. You build it around what's quiet and true." He smiled faintly. "You sound like my conscience." "I've been one before," she said, patting his arm. "Didn't always listen to myself either." At Echelon, Evelyn sat in her office, staring out over the city that had given her everything and nothing in equal measure. The glass walls felt thinner than usual, as if even they were listening to the gossip that buzzed through the company's halls. Daniel Shaw's resignation had gone public that morning. He'd been escorted out under administrative leave, but everyone knew it was the beginning of the end. Still, Evelyn didn't feel triumphant. She felt hollow. Her phone vibrated with messages from reporters, investors, and a dozen PR consultants. She ignored them all. Then came one text that wasn't like the others. "Are you okay, MR?" She read it twice before replying. "You're the one the world's dissecting right now. I should be asking you that." A pause. Then, "Maybe we should talk. Somewhere quiet." Her pulse jumped, but she typed simply, "The pier after sunset." When she arrived, the sky had melted into deep violet, and the sea breathed a rhythm older than words. The wind carried salt and the faint scent of rain, the kind that teased but never came. Michael was already there, leaning against the railing, hands in his jacket pockets. His hair moved in the wind, and for a moment he looked younger, like the man he might have been before the world fell apart. "Didn't think you'd show," he said. "I said I would," she replied. They stood for a long while, just listening the waves, the distant horns, the gulls circling above. "It's strange," he said finally. "I've spent years trying to stay invisible. And now—" He gestured toward the horizon where the city lights blinked like judgment. "I can't hide even if I want to. You don't have to hide anymore. Don't I?" He looked at her eyes, tired but clear. "You saw the headlines. You know what they're saying about us." She met his gaze steadily. "I do, and I don't care." He laughed softly, disbelieving. "You should. You're the CEO of a company that just clawed its way back from scandal. The last thing you need is to be tied to someone like me." "Someone like you," she echoed. "A man with a history. A janitor turned consultant. A single father, barely keeping it together. You deserve someone who fits your world, Evelyn." Her voice lowered. "You think I care about that I've had people who fit my world. They never fit my heart." The wind caught her hair, lifting it across her face, and she brushed it away with a trembling hand. "Michael, I built everything I thought would make me safe. Power, reputation, walls, but none of it means anything if I can't trust the person standing next to me." He said nothing. The sea spoke for both of them for a moment. "I can't ask you to stay close," she said softer now. "Not when the world is watching. But I also can't pretend I don't." She stopped, words trembling between confession and fear. He looked at her eyes, dark with conflict. "Evelyn, you've already given me more than you know. A chance to be who I used to be. To show my daughter that redemption isn't just a story." She stepped closer. Then, "Don't run from it." He closed his eyes. "You don't know what it's like. Every move I make now reflects on her. If this turns ugly, if people twist it, Lily gets caught in the crossfire. I can take the damage. She shouldn't have to." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You're trying to protect her. I understand that. I'm trying to protect both of you," he said quietly. "Because this company, this world, it chews people up, Evelyn. It won't stop at me." A moment passed where neither spoke. The wind pressed at their coats. Then, "Tell me one thing," she said finally. "If no one else existed, if there were no cameras, no investors, no headlines, what would you choose?" He looked out over the dark water where the city's reflection wavered like truth seen through tears. "I'd choose you," he said. "Every time." She smiled, faintly, sadness and warmth blending into something human. "Then maybe that's enough for now." He exhaled, the tension easing just as lightly. "You really think people like us get to start over?" "I think people like us have to," she said. "Otherwise, what was all of this?" For her phone buzzed a message from Hannah Board. "Wants you back early tomorrow. Media follow-up." Evelyn silenced it. "One more minute," she murmured. He nodded. They stood side by side, the sea whispering below. The wind filled the spaces where words couldn't go. From the pier, the city looked almost forgiving. But deep down, both knew that the real test wasn't over. It wasn't about codes or corruption anymore. It was about whether two people from opposite worlds could rewrite the rules that had broken them both. As the last ferry crossed the water, Evelyn turned to him and said quietly, "When the time comes to choose again, don't let fear make the decision." He nodded, slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Neither should you." And somewhere in the distance, a clock tower began to strike 10, steady, deliberate counting down to whatever came next. The auditorium shimmered under soft, golden light. Banners draped along the walls read, "Echelon Tech 1 year stronger." The air buzzed with the low hum of conversation, the rustle of programs, and the occasional burst of polite laughter. On stage, a new plaque gleamed, "Integrity in Innovation Award." Evelyn Carter stood at the podium, composed but visibly moved. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of memory. Exactly 1 year ago, she began this company faced a night that could have ended everything we built. But instead of collapse, it became our turning point. Her eyes swept the audience, engineers, board members, interns, janitors, people who had seen her at her most fragile and stayed. "We discovered that technology doesn't save companies," she continued. "People do. People who act with honesty when no one's watching. People who choose what's right, not what's easy." A pause, then a small smile. "And today, I want to recognize one of those people." The lights shifted toward the aisle. Michael Reyes rose from his seat, modestly adjusting his tie, still not quite comfortable in a suit. The applause began soft, then built until it became a wave that filled the hall. Lily sat beside him, clapping so hard her hair bounced. "Go, Daddy," she whispered. He walked up the stage steps, each one echoing with something larger than footsteps. Redemption, maybe. Evelyn extended her hand, her eyes catching his with quiet pride. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "this is Michael Reyes, the man who reminded us that integrity doesn't need a title." The audience stood. Cameras flashed. Michael blinked at the brightness, humbled a little, overwhelmed. When the applause softened, he leaned into the mic, cleared his throat, and said simply, "I'm not great with speeches. But I'll say this, when you've lost almost everything, you start to realize the things that actually matter never left you. They were just waiting for you to notice." He glanced at Lily, who grinned like she'd been holding her breath for a year. "I used to think redemption was about fixing your mistakes," he continued. "Turns out it's about building something honest after them. I didn't save this company alone. I just tried to do the right thing even when no one was watching." Evelyn's eyes glistened. A quiet pride swelled in the room, the kind that didn't demand attention, only understanding. When the ceremony ended, people filed out with handshakes and kind words. Evelyn and Michael lingered near the back of the stage, the crowd's noise fading into the distance. "You handled that beautifully," she said softly. He smiled. "I still prefer mops to microphones." "You've come a long way from mops," she teased. "I haven't forgotten where I started," he said. "That's the part that keeps me grounded." Her voice lowered. "That's the part that keeps me sane." For a moment, they just stood there, the soft hum of the room surrounding them like a song only they could hear. "Evelyn," he said after a pause, "you ever think about how strange it is how one bad night can become the start of something good?" She smiled faintly. "The universe has a strange sense of humor. Or mercy," he said. Their eyes met, and in that look years of guarded strength softened into something simple and human connection. Across the hall, Lily was busy collecting balloons with Mrs. Green, who now worked part-time as the building's unofficial morale officer. "One for you," she said, handing Evelyn a gold one, "and one for the man who finally learned to take a compliment." Michael laughed. "Still teaching me, Mrs. Green?" "Someone has to," she said, her eyes twinkling. Time slipped forward like chapters turning themselves. A few years later, sunlight poured through the same building now with a new division logo, Echelon Learning Initiative. A small foundation that provided scholarships to underprivileged students interested in technology. The program bore a name, the Reyes Fellowship. Lily, now a teenager, stood at the front of the hall, her voice steady as she presented a project at the foundation's opening ceremony. "My dad taught me that brilliance doesn't come from power or titles," she said. "It comes from choosing kindness in moments that test you, from believing that even small acts can ripple farther than you'll ever see." From the audience, Michael and Evelyn listened, pride stitched quietly into their smiles. Evelyn reached over, brushing his hand lightly. "You realize she's quoting you right. I'm going to pretend she's quoting you," he said with a grin. When the applause faded, they stepped outside together. The city stretched before them, busier, louder, alive. Yet somehow in that chaos there was peace. Evelyn looked at him. "You ever miss your old life before all this?" He thought for a long moment. "No," he said finally, "because I finally understand what home feels like." "And what's that?" she asked. He glanced toward the glass doors where Lily was laughing with her friends. "It's when the people you love can stand in the light, without fear." Evelyn smiled, her eyes soft. "Then we built something worth keeping." "Together," he said. A quiet breeze moved between them, carrying the faint scent of coffee and city rain. Somewhere nearby, a street musician played a slow tune on a saxophone, gentle, familiar, full of life. Michael closed his eyes, letting the music sink in. When he opened them again, the skyline shimmered, the same city that had once tried to break him now, mirroring the man he'd become. He turned to Evelyn. "You know," he said, "for a test that started with $500,000, I think we ended up rich in a better way." She laughed softly. "I think we both passed." Lily ran up, then cheeks flushed, a certificate in hand. "Dad, Ms. Carter. We raised enough for 10 new students this semester." Michael crouched, arms open. "That's my girl." As he hugged her, Evelyn looked on the afternoon light painting them in gold. For the first time in years, she felt no weight on her shoulders, only warmth. The wind whispered through the open doors, brushing against the plaque by the entrance. "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's the lives you change while you're still here." And somewhere faint and steady, a familiar sound echoed the soft ticking of a clock. The same rhythm that had once haunted Evelyn Carter now felt like a heartbeat, one that finally belonged to peace. Sometimes life doesn't give us the clean slate we wish for. It gives us a second chance hidden inside the mess we're trying to survive. Michael Reyes didn't set out to be a hero, he just refused to stop doing what was right, even when no one was watching. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us, that integrity, kindness, and love are not grand gestures. They're quiet choices made in ordinary moments by people who keep showing up. Because the truth is, every single one of us carries the power to rebuild a company, a family, or a heart that once believed it was broken. Now, we'd love to hear your story. Have you ever experienced a moment where honesty or compassion changed someone's life, maybe even your own? Share it with us in the comments below. We read every story, and yours might inspire someone who needs hope tonight. And before you go, tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel, how they connect hearts from every corner of the world. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. It helps this channel grow and allows us to keep creating stories that remind the world goodness still matters. Thank you for spending your time here, for listening, for feeling, and for being part of this journey. Until next time, take care of yourself, be kind, and never stop believing in the quiet power of doing the right thing, even when no one's watching.